Hello there and welcome to another Christmas special of Did You Know Doctor Who? This time we're going to look at the next Christmas special on the list, Voyage of the Damned. I hope you enjoy. On its original air date, Christmas 2007, Voyage of the Damned was the highest viewed story in Doctor Who's history, being 13.31 million viewers. Of course, this is the highest since the 1979 serial City of Death, and is still the highest in terms of any episode since the show's revival. Despite the Titanic being heavily used in the story, it's actually based on the 1972 disaster movie The Poseidon Adventures. Despite the high viewership, the story has a massively mixed reception, and mixed to negative to say the very least, caused several controversies, the first being the last survivor of the Titanic, Milvina Dean, critiquing the use of the Titanic in their story, the second being the moment where the Doctor is being lifted off by the host due to religious concerns, believe it or not. Working titles include Titanic 2 and Starship Titanic. Astrid Peth was originally simply named Peth. She later had the surname Harmon. According to the writer's tale, Dennis Hopper was approached about playing either Max Capricorn or Mr. Copper, which was originally going to be a much smaller part but was expanded as a result. As his agent just happened to be on a plane with James Strong, who had just finished directing Daleks in Manhattan / Evolution of the Daleks, but plans fell through due to Hopper's schedule. Composer Murray Gold and arranger Ben Foster both have cameos as members of the Titanic's band, along with the singer Yamit Mamo, who performs the original song The Stowaway. Mamo also performs Winter Wonderland, an instrumental version of Jingle Bells is heard when the Doctor first arrives. The theme tune was revamped for Voyage of the Damned and was a few seconds longer than the previous versions. This would remain until the end of Tennant's run. This episode was dedicated to Verity Lambert, the first producer of Doctor Who had died about a month prior to broadcast. Angels seemed to be a recurring theme throughout the new series of Doctor Who. The Doctor had been referred to as a Lonely Angel, faced the Weeping Angels and made use of the Masters Mesmeric Communication Network, Archangel. This was Kylie Minogue's first major acting appearance since her diagnosis and recovery from breast cancer 2 years earlier. On the second day of shooting, David Tennant learned that his mother Helen MacDonald was on the verge of losing her 5-year cancer battle. Tennant immediately left a boat to be present during his mother's final moments. This led to the shooting schedule being rearranged to focus on scenes that didn't feature the Doctor and special effects work. The production was then suspended until Tennant was able to return, a stressful situation given Kylie Minogue's short window of availability. In the first draft of this episode, Russell T Davies had planned for the Titanic to cleave Buckingham Palace in two, leaving Queen Elizabeth furiously shaking her fist after the retreating vessel and cursing the Doctor. This same early draft also featured a hoped-for cameo by Prince, now King, Charles. Davies spared the palace as he felt it was too negative of an ending for a holiday episode. It was originally planned for the Jadoon to appear at the end to arrest Max. Russell T Davies threw this out because he thought there were too many things going on at once in this story. At 71 minutes long, Voyage of the Damned holds the record for the 4th longest single episode of Doctor Who since the series revival, and the 6th longest episode of all time. Voyage of the Damned has the distinction of being the first episode of the revived Doctor Who to not be shown by the series' original Canadian broadcast network, the CBC. The network skipped the episode when it began showing Series 4 in the fall of 2008, thus technically leaving the Series 3 cliffhanger ending unresolved for Canadian viewers. Perhaps coincidentally, beginning with Voyage of the Damned, the CBC no longer received an on-screen credit for participation in funding the series, although it continued to do so for the remainder of Series 4. Wilf's appearance in the special was not actually meant to be Wilf, rather Bernard Cribbins was meant to play a one-off character called Stan. The only reason he appeared later on was because the actor who played Don's father died and Cribbins was brought back, becoming the lovable Wilf. When the Doctor is shouting out random numbers to try and stop the Heavenly Host, he says 666, the Devil's number, and 42, the answer to life, the universe and everything in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy books by former Doctor Who writer Douglas Adams, who wrote the story entitled Starship Titanic, which had a very similar plot line, which was also a video game. 42 also was the name of a previous episode. Bernard Cribbins' cameo was filmed in one night, and also his first appearance in Doctor Who since the 60s Dalek movies. Much grander scenes of destruction and chaos when the Titanic is hit were exercised due to budgetary concerns. This included an idea by Russell T Davies to turn the ship upside down. Astrid was originally going to survive the story, but was left behind by the Doctor at the conclusion because she did something he disapproved of. Ban Calafalata was originally going to be blue, but Russell T Davies made him red so that he would be visibly distinct from the mocks of Bahoon, who was also played by Jimmy V. The concluding scene with the Doctor and Mr. Copper was filmed at the WDA compound on Cardiff Docks, which would ironically become the site of the Doctor Who experience. The first scene to be filmed depicted the group being accosted by this host while crossing over the engines. Max Capricorn was originally going to have two milky white eyes, but George Costigan could not see with both contract lenses. Therefore, one was taken out and the character was rendered to have only one bad eye. In Army of Ghosts, the Doctor states that he would love to meet someone called Alonzo, so he could say Alonzo. Here he achieves this aim with midshipman Alonzo Fane. Originally, Max was going to be seen as a passenger on the Titanic in the ballroom during the opening scenes. He was not confined to a life support machine at this point. He became a cyborg on a life support because Russell T Davies decided that revealing some normal businessman to be behind everything was far too anticlimactic. And that is it for today. Voyage of the Damned is by far the weakest of the three Russell T Davies Christmas specials so far, and honestly it's probably the weakest as a whole. I just do not like this story at all. I think it is terribly boring. I think it's terribly generic as well. A lot of the behind the scenes is rather dramatic and kind of depressing, all things considered. So of course I don't think a lot of the actors were necessarily in the best sort of moods. I feel like, honestly, the reason why this special is so watched is because Kylie Minogue appeared in it. And this was more or less at the time where Doctor Who was at its peak. But even then, like, that doesn't necessarily mean just because it had over 13 million people watching that it's a good episode. I think it's a very bad episode, honestly. I dare say I would give this probably a 4 out of 10 if I were to review it properly. Everything about it just kind of sucks, honestly. It's just a very forgettable story. Sure, you have Kylie Minogue in it, and you have a Titanic ship, which honestly, why was it called the Titanic other than for the sake of the cliffhanger at the end of Doomsday? I genuinely do not know what else to say. The Heavenly Host aren't very interesting. Max is a very boring villain. It's kind of fun to see Wilf appear in this. Technically, this is his first appearance. Obviously, he wasn't Wilf at this point, but he would become Wilf. I think the idea that they were going to have a cameo with King Charles would have been fantastic. I think that would have been wonderful. Unfortunately, this is the type of episode which is referenced a lot by a lot of anti-monarchist individuals. I'm not going to name any, but yeah, it's a terrible episode, and terrible people obviously like this episode. All jokes aside, I just don't find this episode very good. I think this is a very weak Christmas special. I mean, it's bleak, I guess. It's unique compared to the other two, which were a little bit more, happier. This one's a lot more bleaker and very depressing. I do like the scene at the end, though, with the Doctor and Mr. Copper. I do quite like that. I do like Mr. Copper's character, but it doesn't take away from the fact that this is a very weak episode. So yeah, I'm not a very big fan of Voyage of the Damned. I think it's a very bad episode. I think it's a very... I think this is really the turning point of the Christmas specials. You had two very good ones, and now this is the moment where they start becoming very, why? Hope you enjoyed this edition of Did You Know Doctor Who, and I'll see you next time.